evening. Welcome to the Bennington Select Board's meeting on September 28th, 2020. We're happy to have you here tonight. I am Donald Campbell, the chair of this board. I'm going to ask the other members of the board to please introduce themselves, starting with Bruce.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the meeting.
I'm Jean Connor.
Hello, I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening. I'm Jim Carroll.
Hi, Sarah Perrin.
And also with us tonight, we have our town manager, Stuart Hurd, assistant town manager, Daniel Monks. We have Cat TV, and we have Nancy Lively with us taking minutes. I'm also just wanting to acknowledge that Jonas Spivak and Merrill Bent are now in the waiting room. If you two are watching, I'm going to leave you there for just a minute while we go through our kind of perfunctory business. First thing I have to do is to read this statement that due to the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency declared by Governor Scott and pursuant to Addendum 6, Executive Order 1-20 Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to attend this meeting. However, the public may view it on Cat TV and call in at 1-646-558-8656, entering the meeting code 849-9817-0121, and I'll put that up on the screen in just a minute. If technology fails us, the meeting will be continued at a time and place to be determined. All votes that are not unanimous will be done with a roll call vote in accordance with the law. So first order of business, let me put up on the screen the call-in information for anyone that is going to want to participate later in this meeting. And I've not quite got it squared on the window here, but here it is. So the dial-in information again is 646-558-8656, and the meeting ID is 849-9817-0121. And then you are prompted to press the pound sign once and the second time. And at that point, you'll be entered into the waiting room. And you'll hear, I believe, music while you wait to be entered into the meeting. So we will enter people into the meeting at the appropriate time in the order that the calls have come in. When you're entered into the meeting, we'd ask you to turn the volume down on Cat TV so that we don't get feedback. And Zoom has added a new security feature, which is that the host can no longer unmute you. You have to unmute yourselves. And so once you've been entered into the meeting, I'll announce you and welcome you into the meeting. You need to press *6 in order to unmute yourself. And you may hear me saying, press *6 along the lines. So 646-558-8656, 849-9817-0121. Those are the call-in numbers. Okay, the first order of business tonight is the consent agenda. This consists of the minutes of September 14th, 2020, and the warrants as circulated. It is our custom to ask board members to please contact the town manager with any questions about the warrants ahead of time, get your questions sorted out. But if you have any that you've not had a chance to talk to the town manager about, now would be the time, either on minutes or on warrants. So for the purposes of discussion, may I have a motion on either of these, on both of these, on the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, conversation, let's have some discussion. Is there anybody that has something that they'd like to add or amend to these? Go ahead, Jean.
Let's see, line 132 on page 4. I seem to remember that when Jeannie was giving her report, she also listed the AG's office. The policies will be reviewed by legal counsel, the police department, and the AG's office.
It should be the state's attorney's office, not the AG.
Okay,
And Jeannie did mention that.
Okay. Is that, can you make that change, please, Nancy? Is that within your, have you got what they're talking about? Have you figured
Yes,
out the
I
line
did.
number?
Yep.
My line numbers are cut off a little bit by the Xerox.
Yep, 133, all set.
Okay. Other comments on either the minutes or the warrants? If not, I would ask you to please unmute yourselves. We will be voting on the minutes as amended and the warrants as circulated. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, consent agenda has passed. Thank you very much. We are now going to move into a phase of public comment. Public comment, we have moved to the front of the meeting because it was difficult for people to figure out the timing at the end. We recognize that this also poses some challenges for people, so we're going to try to be as flexible as we can. I have one caller in the waiting room that I can't identify, and that is a caller ending in 025. So caller ending in 025, in just a minute, I will enter you into the Bennington Select Board meeting. I will ask you to turn down the volume on your Cat TV feed, whatever that is, and you will join us. You may hear us, and if we may not be able to hear you, we'll ask you to press *6, and that will unmute you. So caller ending in 025, welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting. Please press *6 if you'd like to be unmuted and tell us what's on your mind. This is where it would be really handy to have the old Zoom back. So caller ending in 025, press *6 and that will unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, welcome.
Hi, this is Nancy White calling.
Good evening, Nancy.
I've got questions on recreation. Last December, Stuart told us we'd get an update on recreation in January or February. Why haven't you followed up on that update over the past 7 or 8 months?
Stuart, would you like to tell us when the next update on recreation will be?
I don't have a date for you. We've been obviously dealing with COVID and trying to respond to the various problems with opening and maintaining the recreation center. I think probably we'll be chatting sometime. I'm going to say late October, early November as we prepare for budgets.
Okay.
Okay.
So Nancy, if when you say recreation update, we have had recreation center updates on the from Jean and other people along the line. But what exactly are you looking for, please?
Well, I'm talking about all the information that I've been waiting to hear, follow-ups about what you've been not talking too much about at the rec center. Is it true that our town rec center has now been reclassified as a regional recreation center community center?
So go ahead, Stuart.
I mean, going back to when we first started talking about potentially contracting with the Y, I think that was the goal, that it would become a regional community center available to all, as it has been, because we have resident, non-resident memberships. And if they're calling themselves that, then I'm happy to hear that.
So Nancy, if I may, are your questions really around the rec center and the relationship with the YMCA? Would it be helpful for you to have us put that on the agenda for a future meeting?
Well, but we were told we were going to talk about this in January or February. Didn't I see a warning in the Bennington Banner last September or October about the rec center being reclassified? And yet we never heard any public hearings or a town-wide vote. And I'm just concerned. If this has happened, how was it legal?
Stuart, you're looking about as perplexed as me. I think we're on the same track we've been on, Nancy. I do acknowledge that there's been this pandemic thing that we've been working our way through and a lot of adaptations that have had to come with that. But I'm happy to schedule I understand that you want information on this, and that's absolutely legitimate. I'm happy to schedule a topic on this if you'd like at our next select board meeting, and we could get an update from the YMCA and any other questions you have. Would that satisfy you?
That's fine, but all of these things happened prior to COVID. That's why I've been waiting for the update in January or February to bring these things up. But is it true, is our local rec center now classified as a regional recreation center, community center?
I wouldn't even know who makes that classification, Stuart.
Well, it's what the Y is calling itself. It's still the facility for the Bennington Recreation Center. They are now managed and operated by the YMCA, and they are free to call themselves what they wish. It's not a name change. It's not a name designation. It's not even a classification. It's just that the goal was to really open this center to become a community center, so that it is a central part of the community and of the region, because we serve more than just Bennington residents.
Yeah, pursuant to a management agreement that we've reviewed ad nauseum and finalized with the YMCA for now.
Okay, and one other question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Gina. Before you go into that, Nancy, if I may, Jean seems to want to respond on this point.
Yeah, I'm just curious if, Nancy, what you're really asking is, has anything really changed? And I think the answer is no. It's the same as it was. It's just what Stu said. That's what it's being called now, but I don't think anything's changed. I think we're exactly where we were. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think we are.
Legally.
Well, I would ask.
I don't think anything's, just because they're calling them something different, I don't think means that we are something different yet.
Well, I guess I'd ask you to put this on the agenda for the next meeting, because I disagree with.
Sure. We may have lost you, Nancy. You still there?
Yes, I have one other question.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. We will get this on a future agenda meeting. We'll get Just Remloving here, and we're due for an update anyway on how they're doing and how things are going, and how the asbestos removal and the construction and everything's going. So that is a good agenda topic. Your second question?
This ties into what you talked about at the last meeting.
Nancy, are you still there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Did I understand at the last meeting that Shannon Barsotti is going to be writing grants for nonprofits in the town office?
Stuart, would you like to explain how that works, please?
Yes, Nancy, as with most state and federal grant monies that come into the community, such as Vermont Community Development Block Grant Program, those kinds of things, the town must be the applicant. It's a pass-through system, and that's what's happening with some of these CARES Act money. The town must be the one to apply, and we then pass those funds on to nonprofits who are eligible to receive them. And so, yes, she is writing grants on behalf of the town that will benefit nonprofits. They are eligible to receive those funds.
I guess my question is this. The nonprofits and private groups have always been separate from town of Bennington business. And I would question why we're paying a town official, and I'm sure it's going to take her quite a bit of time to write these grants. Why is she writing a grant for the Massachusetts YMCA in Bennington, Vermont?
That grant will actually allow us to construct some fencing in the northeast corner of the recreation center area, which will allow for outdoor youth activities. And when I say youth, I mean children, without endangering them by running into the street or any of those kinds of things. So it benefits the people of Bennington, but because the Y is the operational manager of the center, they will be the ones overseeing the project and erecting the fence.
So this is very standard process, Nancy. It's been happening this way for ages. This is just the way towns go about applying for funds. It's nothing unusual here. This is how it happens. I do need to move on to the next agenda item. I'd say if you have any more questions about that, please call Stuart and he can explain that process to you in greater detail, but it's very standard and it's happened this way under many previous employees prior to Shannon. Listen, thank you very much for joining us, Nancy. Is there anything else on your mind tonight?
No, please get the recreation center on the agenda because we're spending way too much money up there. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. So we are going to move on now to our next agenda item, which is the policy on displays and signs. And I'm going to admit Merrill Bent into the meeting here. And Merrill, I need to tell you that you have to press *6 in order to unmute yourself. You probably already knew that, but we're just getting used to this system. There she is.
Hi there. Sorry.
How are you tonight?
On the Facebook feed.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us. As you know, we really appreciated the fact that you took the initiative to help us think through this before we get in over our heads on this particular issue. And I think the Montpelier language was really a great place to start. We're very happy with that. And so, as you know, we passed this draft on an interim basis at our last meeting, kind of subject to tonight. I think many of us have spent a lot of time kind of working on it and digging through it, and I have a few small questions. You and I spoke before the meeting, and you expressed a preference that maybe we go through it person by person to make sure that we carry a person's comments all the way through each thing. But maybe I'll start with that, but before I do, would you like to give us a brief overview of why you think it's necessary for us to implement this at this time, or why you think it would be beneficial, maybe is a better way to put that?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more of the requests that you're already seeing for people to come forward with various forms of expression that they want to have take place in public areas, and some of those public areas are controlled by the town, and I understand there's a fine balance between, protected First Amendment type speech and government speech, and we just want to make sure that we make that line very clear early on so that people understand exactly where that line is, and understand what the process is if they do want to use government property for some type of government-sponsored speech. And so just seeing how this is unfolded in other communities, especially recently where people have started getting into street painting or mural painting and other things, to have that process in place and to have that vetting system in place to make sure that the town of Bennington is putting forth a message that is consistent with the values of Bennington. Because otherwise, you can sort of, in the interest of trying to be fair, you can lose the message that it really is and should be a message coming from the town as opposed to each and every individual opinion. And that's what we're really trying to draw the line. And I want to be clear too, this doesn't change that there are traditional forums for certain types of free speech, which is there's no change in that aspect of your First Amendment rights in a municipal setting. This is a separate type of speech, and so we want to be very clear in setting the parameters so that it remains that separate type of speech. And that is, just to be clear, that's government speech.
That's very, very helpful. I don't know if government speech is a term of art, but it is in here in line 17, undefined. Is that something that's self-evident?
Yeah, it is a term of art, but we could also define it. I think that the thrust of the policy as a whole, and in particular the messages or the types of messages that the town wants to convey, I don't remember exactly what section that's in, but that sort of encapsulates what the town is trying to put forth as its speech.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the guidelines,
I think it's in
the guidelines that talk about the positive
right. Yeah, it is
desired.
in section 6A.
Well, so board members, I would like to lob a few general thoughts, and then maybe we'll just go in our usual order, starting with Bruce after I get done, and we'll give Meryl a sort of a load of things to think about, and then let's let her see if she can pull our thoughts together. I'm not sure I want to get into a situation where we're doing an awful lot of editing by vote. So let's see if we can give her our thoughts kind of linearly. So overall, Meryl, I'm very pleased with this. I would say this is Bennington. In Bennington, we call ourselves the Select Board, which is 2 words. So it's that maybe up in Montpelier they call themselves Select Board, but down here we are the Select Board. So that needs to be changed throughout the document. I think in line 50, I wondered, this section 2 is really about installations only on roads. I wondered if we could call that public road safety, or if you'd consider calling that public road safety, because there are other things that could be considered that would not necessarily go through the DPW. So I had rewritten this first sentence to say, prior to any consideration by the Town of Bennington Select Board, all projects proposed to be located on a public road shall be submitted by the town manager to the Bennington Department of Public Works, and in case of highway class 1 town highways, to V-Trans. So I would like to see if we could get that to be focused on roads, and then that the town manager is submitting things to DPW, not individuals.
Yes, I think that's a very well taken there, Donald.
Thank you. Section 4, there's a line 70, there's a long sentence about giving the important reasons, or this is important for 2 reasons. In my opinion, we could scratch that whole line. I mean, those 2 things are true, but at some level, this is just a document that is really a little bit more factual than anything else. And I would say it's enough to say, in general, projects should only be located on local streets that carry less than 10,000 vehicles on an average day. And then go on to projects should be located in mid-block area, like that. On line 80, it refers to, this is if a project is put in a neighborhood or is proposed for a neighborhood. And the current language says, consistent with the character of the neighborhood and should have members of the neighborhood as co-sponsors. I wonder if we could change members to multiple households, so that it's not just members of one family, but that there are multiple households involved in that. Again, on to the sort of distinction between what the town manager does and what the select board does. In section 6, line 105, feel the need to add there the town manager's role and that of the relevant jurisdictional authorities, if we want to put them in. So maybe we do something like, following a review by DPW and or V-Trans, the town manager and relevant jurisdictional authorities, projects shall be reviewed under the following guidelines and standards by the select board. So I think the idea there is that we clear all the hurdles, we clear the logistic hurdles before we spend a lot of time wringing our hands over it. Does that make sense, Meryl?
I'm sorry, you're in section 6 and which paragraph?
First paragraph, line 105. following a review, the first sentence, following a review by DPW and or V-Trans, town manager and relevant jurisdictional authorities, projects shall be reviewed under the following guidelines, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so you're suggesting to be more specific with the relevant jurisdictional authorities, because that generality was just intended to reflect that there may be different, it could be DPW in one instance, it could be just the town manager in another instance.
Well, perhaps the town manager catches any other ordinances. I guess that would be, I think I heard Dan say this, the historic preservation review and other downtown standards would probably all be caught by the town manager, right?
If they were applicable. You mean under a separate provision that there's another review that would be required by another body under another ordinance or policy?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's right. So if there's anything else that needs to be done besides DPW or V-Trans, if it's in violation of any other ordinance or any other reason why it would not be a legal proposal, it shouldn't come. That shouldn't come to a select board, get it approved, find out it's illegal, go back and do it over again.
Okay, then I agree with your change to say to add by DPW and or V-Trans town manager and such other relevant jurisdictional authorities as may be applicable. I think that's how we want to go with that.
That's good. Yeah, that's what I think what I'm getting at. Thank you for that. Thank you for helping me with that. Yes. And then nothing on page 4. Section 6B8, my line 172. I think it's just a very minor thing, but I think that's supposed to be promotes community and public good. So I think there's supposed to be an S in there. Very, very small change. In 16, Mary Garish had proposed that we reference section 8, subsection 5, which is the section that refers to expiration of time periods.
Extension?
Yes.
Okay, so just to reference unless extended pursuant to section 8.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So then on the process piece, I think this is pretty good and pretty understandable at this point, except again that the second, and this is sort of my overall theme, but the second step seems to focus mostly on DPW and V-Trans, and I think it's quite possible that we'll have projects come in that don't hit either of those. So I'm wondering if we could add into the very first line a parenthetical statement that says, after initial application is deemed sufficient for review by the town manager.
Prior to added sole discretion?
Prior to, after the word conditions. Barring any opinion by DPW or V-Trans that a project presents an unreasonable degradation of pedestrian or motor vehicle safety, which cannot be mitigated by conditions, and after initial application is deemed sufficient for review by the town manager shall schedule the project to be reviewed at the select board's next, I would add, available, regularly scheduled meeting.
And that's just for street projects right now, that provision that you're talking about. Because under step 2, there's 2 separate prongs. There's street painting projects, which is what you're talking about, and then there's also other projects that aren't street painting projects. So do you want to have that in both sections then? Actually, the other one already sort of has that.
I think that's the old version you're looking at. There was an old version in which we had that second section in there, but I think the new version got rid of that.
What? New version?
Where do you see it? Where do you see the part about the non?
I'm looking at section 7, step 2.
Yep.
And then under that, there's street painting projects and other projects underlined. You don't have that? Whew, okay. Let me make sure.
No, that was eliminated, Meryl.
There was a section in there that I struggled with a little bit.
Okay. So there was an original version that I sent that had just street painting. Then we added other types of projects.
And then it came out in this version that we're looking at. So other projects has been taken out of this version
Okay.
that we're reviewing. And I actually, this was an attempt to add it back in.
Oh, all right. I'm not sure why that came out.
So my original suggestion would be that we put other projects back in. A proposed project will be reviewed
At the select board next available meeting.
at the next available meeting after an initial application is deemed sufficient for review by the town manager. I actually like that sentence, and I'm trying to put that sentence back in
Yeah.
to step
Okay.
2.
Okay.
And Meryl, we didn't take that out.
Yeah, I'm a little confused, but what I'm gonna do once we're done here is just make sure we're looking at the same version otherwise.
Board, I feel like I'm taking a little bit more than my share of the time. I have just 2 quick things left to go after this, and then we'll move on to Bruce. Meryl, are you caught up on that point?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so in step 3, installation, I am not sure what this one sentence means and wonder if it could be clarified. The primary contact shall be responsible for protecting all public and private facilities placed in the public right of way. What would that be? What is the primary contact vowing to protect in that sentence?
I think just if there are any usage probably of cones or other property like that, municipal property that's being used to facilitate the project.
I see. Temporary barriers,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't want to spend much more time.
I mean, what I could do is place a, EG, temporary barriers, so that people know that that's an example, but not an exhaustive list of what the idea is.
That would certainly help me. I wasn't sure what this was talking about.
Sure, okay, no problem.
And then my last comment is that on my line 251, which is section 3, I think we should replace the word painting with capital P project so that we include all projects. Maintenance and repair of the project remains the responsibility of the primary contact.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Bruce, where are you on this?
Well, thank you, Donald. I was going to ask ask for some of the same changes, but that's all in the editing process. I think those are fine. Excuse me. My issue is much more a substantive one, and it's found at line 63, which is section 3, the request process, and probably it'll need some subsequent changing when you get to the review process. But if we agree to the substantive change that I'm going to suggest. Is this the appropriate time to make a substantive change? Or are we just looking at editing stuff?
I think we have to. I think we have to look at substantive change too, even if that kicks us into another meeting.
Well, that's the way life is. Here I go. So here's what I'm going to suggest, and I'll move it, and then if there's a second, I'll speak to it. And that is, after the word deliberation, on line 63, I would propose inserting the following, or in the alternative, accompanied by a petition describing the project and signed by 2% of the voters of the town of Bennington. And if there's a second, then I will speak to it.
Second that.
So apparently there is.
So we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded.
May I speak to it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I am still, after 2 weeks, where I was 2 weeks ago, which is not fully comfortable with requiring a sponsor. I understand the dilemma, and I get that, and I'm trying to be cognizant of the fact that we don't want any and all projects. This could overwhelm almost anybody. So instead of a sponsor, if a proposal came from a group of individuals, basically it's the same, all the same up above, a private group or individuals, if they desire to have a project considered, they could get a sponsor and that would be fine. Or in the alternative, they could gather what will be approximately 200. And by the way, I'm not tied to that percentage, but I was trying to make something more difficult than usual, but not so difficult as we're just saying, no, you'll never make it. But I'm open to suggestions. My 2% would mean approximately 200 right now. I just called Cassie today. We have 10,000. We have nearly 10,000 registered voters in the town. So what that would mean is if they could gather 200 signatures, then they could be placed probably after all this other consideration would be taking place, they could be placed on our agenda. That's really all that's asking. It's just another gate.
Yep. It's not changing the process of looking.
It's not changing
standards.
the process. So we would probably have to change that last section where it basically talks about the sponsor as well at the end, where we're talking about, I think it's called review. But I'm trusting that Meryl knows how to make the document,
Yeah.
itself.
I have hands up here, but I'm going to start with Meryl since we've got Meryl on the call here, and then we'll go to Jeannie, and then we'll go to Jim.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that you've already identified the major issue, which is that you could have a lot of petitions to deal with, number one. And number two, if there isn't the availability of a sponsor on the select board, the chances are it's not going to be successful, it wouldn't be successful anyway. So I guess I want to know, so the petition itself would put it in front of the select board for review. It's not an automatic approval or, win, I guess, for lack of a better term. But, if there isn't even a sponsor, I guess somebody could be persuasive, but chances are if you can't find one person on the select board who's willing to sponsor it, then you're not going to be successful in getting it through. So now you've just got a situation where the select board has spent a lot of time on something that doesn't have, a lot of meeting time on something that doesn't really have legs, on something that may potentially just not meet with the type of message that Bennington would ever want to send. It's nice to have that public discussion, I suppose, but there are other alternatives to people voicing their opinions than putting it on, asking the government to use its speech to support and sponsor that message. I'm just trying to think through a little more just the sort of the practicalities of that. I mean, I don't know how often you might have that issue arise, but I think you could expect to see it several times, given the sort of current trend towards these types of projects and proposals.
Okay, thanks, Meryl. Let's go down the line here. We're gonna go Jeannie, Jim, and then Dan.
Hi. So I do like the idea of looking for a select board sponsor. I think for the very reasons that Meryl is noting. As I said before, I do think there's a fairness issue both to the person making the proposal and also to the community. I also can imagine having a select board who would be interested to know if there were 5% of the population of the registered voters who might believe in something strongly enough that they would sign a petition. But for me, the reason to do the petition, it would need to be secondary, because I would want them to know whether there's any active support on the select board. And second, it feels to me like if 5% of the voters cared enough about an issue that they were willing to sign a petition, then I would want to hear more about why that number. I would not want it to be a small number. I would want it to be a large number of people, because then I think I would want to hear the reasoning. And it might still go down, it still might not come to fruition, but I do think that there should, I'm just trying to think about what the alternative would be for a proposal that might be a good proposal, but a current board just doesn't like it. So I could see it as a secondary method, but I would want for anyone bringing a proposal forward to first come to the board and see if there was a champion, so that they knew where they stood before they began.
And Jeannie, you're proposing, it sounds like a shift to a 5%, Bruce, as opposed to.
I would want it to be a substantial number of people. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to Jim. Thank you for your comments, Jeannie. Let's go to Jim, and then we'll go to Dan, and then back to Bruce.
Thanks, Don. I don't necessarily object to Bruce's inclusion of that, but Meryl, perhaps you can answer this. Even with a petition, X number of people, it still would fall in the sole discretion of the select board to either accept or reject in its final analysis. Meryl?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so you agree that's correct. Okay. Well, I just think that, in my own opinion, the adding another layer isn't necessarily so bad. And by layer, I mean a petition, but an individual could solely come before the board, having met all the prior criteria, and then with the town manager saying that they've met all the criteria. So why add another layer? And I guess that's my question for Bruce.
I'm going to say, Bruce, why don't you go ahead and answer that question before we go to Dan, please, and then we'll let Dan in.
Okay. Jim, it's not another layer. It's an alternative layer. And by the way, I originally had 5% as a number. I don't know why I changed it to 2, but 5 is perfectly fine for me. But it's not another layer. It's an alternative for those who may not feel welcome by the select board. I'm just thinking of, there are people in this town who feel shy about coming for us. And I know that it might seem odd that they would go for a petition instead. And I agree with Meryl and with Jeannie that, if it doesn't have at least one champion on the board, or sponsor, or whatever term we want to use, it's not likely to fly. But I'm perfectly willing to give people opportunities, and then I'll say my end at the end. So Jim, it's not another layer. It's an alternative. It's just a different door. Otherwise, it all stays the same.
Let's, in the spirit of keeping this conversation moving, let's leave that point for now and go on to you, Dan.
I just want to remind everybody, we're talking about government speech here. This isn't an individual's freedom of speech issue. This is an issue of what does the select board want to put out as a message. And I just think by forcing the issue with a petition is just not, it's an inefficient government. It's not, I don't think it's appropriate. I also think you have to consider the burden on the town clerk's office. Every time somebody wants to do this, we got to have our town clerk count petitions and determine who's registered and who's not. I mean, this is your speech as our representatives. What do you want to put out there? It's just the same thing as the legislature. There has to be a sponsor for a bill. Not everybody in the citizenry gets to promote their individual bills for the legislature to consider. And I also have to remember, any citizen whatsoever can come during public comment and make their case. They don't need to have a petition. I just think it's onerous and unnecessary for this process. That's just my opinion.
And to be clear, any citizen could come in front of the board in public comment and say, I would like a sponsor. Here's my idea, I would like a sponsor. So it's not like you have to, so there are ways in, but Bruce, your hand was up, and then I've got, who's BT Con? Is that Catamount?
No, that's me. I have a brand new computer and it's not quite set up the way I want it yet.
Okay, Bruce, did you make your point? If so, I'd like to go on to Jean Connor.
So long as I get a word before we vote.
Okay, go ahead, Jean.
Meryl, did you want to say something? I think you tried to interject.
Sorry, I just raised my hand.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering if there would be some sort of a mechanism, even if it was just not as formal, where if someone has an idea, but they don't want to go to the trouble of designing it or, spending a lot of time on it, but just sort of wanting to get a feel for if it would even have a chance, if there was some mechanism where that could happen. I would hate for someone to spend an enormous amount of time and possibly money coming up with a design and then it not even getting a sponsor. It seems, I would be a little bit upset about that if there wasn't a mechanism to do that. Like almost when it's in like the idea phase. Run it by someone. I don't know how that, if it's even possible. And the other comment I had was on 123, number 2, line 123, number 2. It's how to qualify the artwork, provide the highest quality artwork available. That to me is really, really subjective, and I don't know if there's a way to, I don't know how, describe what it is. I think we all know what that is, but I don't know the words to use. If there's a way to make it less subjective.
That's a tough one. That whole string of things is a little bit tough, but point well taken. So we're Bruce, I don't know if you have any other comments besides this. If this is your only comment, then we should
This
find
is,
something to,
I don't mean for it to sidetrack the entire, I really do think we need to have a policy, even though I voted against this last time. And I likely will not vote against it this time, but with the corrections that have been made already, and the additions, and there are some more to come, I know. I'd be interested in hearing if Meryl has something, and then I just want to respond to Dan briefly.
Go ahead, Meryl, thank you.
Sure, thanks. On the 5%, I just was gonna note for you folks that that's consistent with other petition requirements you probably all know this if you wanna do ordinance overrides or if you wanna get some other review by the board. So that would be at least consistent with other similar types of mechanisms. And another comment I was going to make is in terms of the sponsor aspect, one thing that the board could consider is a provision just stating that a sponsorship by the board doesn't necessarily, it may or may not mean a promotion by that individual board member. It could just mean that that board member wants to have that public discussion or open it up to public discussion. I don't know if that's something that would be of interest to bring it to the table. And then on Jean Connor's comment, the language I would suggest to change to that guidelines A2 is provide professional quality artwork. And that way you're basically saying to have a professional artist or somebody of that level. So those were my comments that I had written down.
Well, listen, folks, I'm a little bit of the opinion that this is unnecessary. However, I also feel like it's not going to do a lot of harm because I do think that we should be consistent with 5% if we go this route. And I think it's such a high bar that it would be so much easier to walk into a select board meeting and say, here's a good idea, that the practical reality is that we would very, very rarely, if ever, face this. The other thing is this is a policy, it's not an ordinance. This is something that we can change if we find it's not working. We can simply vote to change it. We're looking for principles here. We're looking for how we want to use our government speech, limit it, restrict it, promote it, whatever it is. And so it feels to me like we should go ahead and move on, frankly. And I'd be happy to, if others feel this way, I'd be happy to call the vote on this and just see where we lie. If Bruce, if you're amending to 5%, and
yes,
Meryl, you think you could adjust the language both at the beginning and the end to accommodate this, it feels to me like we could move on. Okay, Bruce, are you on with 5%?
Yes.
Can we though, I was not proposing that it be an either or. I was proposing it be a 1-2. So that an individual that has a proposal needs to bring that to the select board if there is not a sponsor. And I do think there needs to be a champion because I think that we should not be playing around here. So if there's not a sponsor for the idea, then there is an alternative route, and that would be to get 5% of the registered voters to sign a petition, and then it would come back to the select board for further discussion. But I'm not in favor of doing an either or, because I do think that the usual route would be that something would come before the select board, at least one person thinks it's a good idea, then there's discussion and, we move forward with it. So I don't want to make it an either or. I really do want it to be a 1-2.
Bruce, could you live with that? In the event that a sponsor is not available, a petition may be signed by 5% of the population or something like that?
Sure.
Jeannie, would that do it for you? Meryl, is that within legal bounds?
Yes.
Okay. Bruce, why don't you restate the motion for Nancy, please?
Oh, boy. Because I just don't know how I've just incorporated Jeannie's language in. Or if no sponsor is found, a proposal may be accompanied by a petition describing the project and signed by 5% of the voters of the town of Bennington. That's at line 63 and whatever the other line is, and two, I'd have to look.
I think we've got it, Bruce. Okay, any other comments?
Does anyone else feel like there may be some confusion and expectation that because they've reached the threshold of getting 500 signatures, it's going to somehow end up on a ballot and not just a vote of the select board? You know, you think
No,
it's
I don't think that's it.
okay.
Well, and Merrill did offer to work some language in, which clarifies that this is just for the purposes of having it be considered by the select board. Yeah, fair point, Jim. Okay, I have not been taking everybody's hands down, so please take your hands down if you're finished with your point. I guess I would say, are there any other comments? Stuart, did you want to weigh in on this?
No, I'm fine. Thank
And
you.
Dan, are you, you've spoken your piece?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so let me call the vote on this. All in favor of this policy adjustment as proposed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
No.
Vote. Okay, so we have an opposition, which means I'm going to have to do a roll call vote. So, Bruce, how do you vote on the? How do you vote on the?
Aye.
Jean Connor, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jeannie Jenkins, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jim Carroll, how do you vote?
No.
Sarah Perrin, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair also votes in favor of the motion. So that motion is passed. We're going to move on. And Bruce, thank you for bringing that in a way that we could talk about and work on together. Let's go to our next person in line, which is normally Jean Connor. Let me tell you, it's 7 o'clock now. We have Jonas Spivak, most patient man in America, waiting in the waiting room. So I guess I would say we can either go through comments quickly, or we can, let's try to go through comments quickly. We'll give it 10 minutes, Jonah, hang in there. And if in 10 minutes it doesn't seem like we're nearing an end on this, then we'll push it off until our next meeting. So go ahead, Jean. Nothing from Jean?
Comments on the policy we're working on?
You already did.
Yes.
You're muted, Donald.
I'm so sorry. Comments on the display signs and arts on public property policy that we're talking about. General comments or specific comments from you? No.
I've already given mine.
Okay. And Jeannie, how about you?
I just have one concern. It's on line 208 under section 7, the review process. I'm wondering, Meryl, is there a way, rather than for a resident to do sort of shopping around looking for a sponsor and they may not know the select board well, is there a way for those requests to come in to, for instance, the town manager or designee, and have that just sent out to, the idea sent out to the full board? So that I'm just concerned about the shopping around looking.
I think the public comment period is really the best way to do that. I mean, then you're not placing any additional burden on any other town official, and there's no commentary about how those communications take place, and then you just have it discussed in an open forum at the beginning of a select board meeting for all to hear.
Okay, so where would that? So if we could say that it should be introduced during public comment,
Or that it's an option.
yeah.
Public comment's not the only option, though.
Yeah, I think-
You could call a select board member. You could email a select board member. You could stop them in Hannaford's. You could do any of these things.
Okay.
Do you want to add any language about those options, or do you want to just leave people to their own devices to figure that out?
I think I'm fine with their own devices. I just worry about, some people feeling like because they're really nice people, they get bombarded with requests and they feel uncomfortable saying no. So that's my concern with this. I don't know if, and maybe others share that concern.
Jeannie, I'd be inclined to drive it for a while and see if we have a problem with it.
Okay, that's fine.
Donald, may I just jump in there?
Go ahead, Stu.
In section 3, we've already dealt with the person attempting to get a select board sponsor or get a petition. Do we really need that first sentence, line in the review process, line 208?
It's redundant.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it start with this process begins by submitting to the town manager's office?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Said it.
That's
right.
really what we
Perfect,
want. So yeah, that's really what we want. That's the overall theme that I've been trying to get at is that we don't want to be considering projects that could never go forward because of some legal thing, highway thing, you name it. So. Okay, thank you, Jeannie, for that. Jim, did you have any further comments? And then we'll go to Sarah.
No, I just wanted to, just to Jeannie Jenkins' point that she just made. Stu made my point for me at the beginning of this document. It says that the starting point is the town manager and the submission of any project, and he will determine if it meets VTrans and DPW requirements for the town. So that's the starting point. And I agree that first sentence is not necessary. And that's all it requires.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, and when I think it was you, Donald, who said you could be approached at the grocery store about something like this, and that didn't really appeal to me. But I think the fact that it has to go through Stu first allays my fears.
That is just about finding a sponsor. That's not about anything to do with public meetings. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different ways to find a sponsor, is what I'm getting at. Probably the most obvious way is to walk into a meeting and ask for one. You could also email, you could call, there are a number of different ways to find out who would think this is a good idea and who would be willing to go to bat for this.
So they won't be asking for a sponsor until it's gone through Stu. Stu is the first seat.
This is the review process that starts with the manager.
Right.
Section 3 still requires that they get a sponsor or they get a petition. I mean, before we can start to review the proposal, we ought to know, I think, whether it has legs.
Has legs, yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused.
Gina, I'm tempted to tear it apart right now with you, but I'm not. I wonder if we could move on to Sarah and let her offer any comments and then maybe see where we are as a group.
Yeah, I guess I just would like clarification, like exactly what the steps are in the order that they need to happen.
Pretty well laid out here. So go ahead. Meryl, do you want to summarize there, or that starting with technical review?
Well, I think I understand what Jean's confusion is, but I think that it's just really key to distinguish between asking for a sponsor and the third portion of it, which is actual select board review of the project. Mm-hmm. So you might ask a select board member to sponsor your idea, but that's not a review. That's just an initial, okay, I have a sponsor. And then you're going to the town manager to present it as far as all of the jurisdictional components, whether the application is complete. And only then is there a review by the select board as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jean, it doesn't address the question that I was concerned about, but I'm willing to let it just see how it plays out and then see if we need to be more prescriptive.
Yeah, it just seems if the town manager is not going to sign off on it, then why do they won't even bother getting a sponsor? To me, it's backwards.
To be clear, the town manager is not, this is a select board decision on government speech. The town manager's role is mechanical, not mechanical, but looking at ordinances, looking at administrative, thank you. So the town manager is not in a position to say, nah, I don't really believe in that. I'm not going to bring that one to the select board. That's not what happened.
No, I understand that, but I think the point is still there. If it doesn't meet safety requirements and other sorts of requirements, then getting a sponsor it's not even going to get that far.
If I could jump in, I think, Jeannie, that the person comes with the idea.
Right.
The select board says, well, that's not a bad idea. Why don't you prepare it and present it to the manager, and we'll see if it meets the guidelines. He or she or the group has the sponsor, but they don't necessarily have the design fully vetted and approved. And that's where I see the manager's role, is making sure that, just as we did with the current mural, we went through it, we looked at it, we tried to find a location that was safe and easier to maintain than ultimately the first position was. So
Yeah,
I see my role.
The sponsorship is just to know whether you should go through the trouble, I guess, of putting together the full application and getting all of your approvals. So you'll say, hey, I have this great idea, and if you have somebody who will buy in on the board, then you prepare the whole presentation for Stu to approve, and then for the select board to consider on a substantive level. So Stu's review is more of an administrative review, just making sure the checkboxes are ticked, whereas the select board's review is of the substance of the project to determine whether it satisfies the criteria and the policy and whether it presents a message that the select board wants to send.
So I really want to move us on here. Sarah, I guess, do you have any comments that you would like to make at this point?
Yeah, I also do share the same concern about sponsorship. I guess one of my thoughts, since we're kind of going back and forth, where do you get the sponsorship, is an initial possibly putting up a request to seek sponsorship so that it comes to the entire board and we talk about it in a meeting so that we know the idea and we can all say, hey, we all want to sponsor it. 2 of us want to sponsor it, or no, this isn't something anybody wants to sponsor. So I guess my thought is that request would go on the town site or it would go in an application packet.
Well, yeah, so that could happen. I would just like to leave the door open for somebody who didn't really feel comfortable coming to the whole meeting, felt like they had a good idea, wanted to find out if a select board member would sponsor it, and run it through that process too. I feel like we get a chance to chew on the whole thing later on in the process. That the idea of having a sponsor is really just to make sure that somebody who's elected thinks it's a good enough idea and feels like it will get a decent consideration at the select board meeting, so that it's enough for the town staff to invest time in it to try to figure out if it's a viable proposal. Then it comes to the select board, and then we chew on it, and then we talk about its merits. I think that's the right order.
Yes, yeah, and I think the part of that I might have misunderstood or might be missing is that somebody may just say, yes, I'm going to sponsor it, but they're not going to vote for it and they're not a champion for it. That's also my concern.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can fix for that right now. So listen, I'd like to move on in this agenda. I guess my proposal would be that we let Sarah, not wanting to ignore your point, but being a little bit perplexed by it, maybe we let Meryl think about this a little bit and come back to us with another draft at our next meeting. We're not in a position to approve, I don't think, all the changes that we've talked about tonight until we all see a red line version And we do like red lines, Meryl, if possible, so that we can see what changes have been made. But I guess if somebody felt so moved, it might be nice to carry over the interim policy that we are currently working under, at least until our next meeting.
If we're not going to get any proposals, do we need it?
Donald, can I just remind you, we also have the BBC 3 points.
Okay.
So,
all right, we're going to have to put this off then. So we're going to have to put this off for another meeting. We're not going to make it through that tonight.
Donald, I can incorporate, I've reviewed the BBC letter as well, and if you'd like, I can put some proposed red lines and bringing those in just for the board's consideration.
That would be great. Most of those comments are good. Some of them are redundant when it gets down to sort of authorities reviewing. So I think you'll find a couple of those comments are already baked into the proposal, but they were thoughtful comments from a good downtown partner. So that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we're just gonna table this for now. Nobody wants to carry over the existing policy we have in place. I mean, I guess de facto that's what's in place. If somebody did bring a proposal to us, we would probably say, well, we're between policies right now, but this is what we're working on.
Well, I am concerned. I think it would be worth having a motion to keep the interim policy in place for 2 more weeks.
Okay, go ahead and make it then, Jeannie, if you'd like to.
Okay, so moved. I'm moving that.
Is there a second? No second? Okay.
All right.
So
Fabulous.
nobody wants to carry over the interim policy, so we will essentially go without a policy until we have a chance to work on this some more next week. It is a policy and not an ordinance, so I think it reflects the board's thinking one way or the other. We're going to move on.
Donald, when would you like another draft?
We'd like it in time for our October 12th meeting, if possible, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, people. Tried to wrap that up, but couldn't quite. Okay, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, and I mentioned to you that there's a very patient man out there who does a tremendous amount for Bennington. He also happens to look great in armor. Oh, wait, before I go on, Meryl, thank you. Thank you, Meryl Bent, for joining us. I'm sorry I started to transition too quickly, but thank you for being with us. Thank you for helping us.
Thanks.
We look forward to taking this up with you again in a couple weeks. So back to gushing about Jonah. Jonah, we've got you in the meeting now, and you have to press *6 in order for us to be able to hear you. But there you go. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. What I'm here tonight for is to basically give you a little bit of a wrap-up of where we were 6 weeks ago. So for a little change of scenery, a little change of mindset, everyone take a deep breath. It's been just about 6 weeks since we had our 243rd celebration of the Battle of Bennington. And I wanted to start by doing some thank yous. And I guess that's sort of a necessary piece of this. So I really need to start by thanking the town. Stuart Hurd and the town, of course, were financial supporters of this effort, as they have been perhaps since 1778. I suspect the town has been ponying up since that time. Likewise, I'd like to point out the role of Shannon Barsotti, our community development director, who really played, she was our boots on the ground for the town at every meeting, so helpful throughout the process. And a shout out for Sarah Perrin, your own select board member. Hi, Sarah. Who just was a member of our committee and was so wonderful throughout this process, including some very key additions right at the end regarding the ceremony that I think really enhanced the celebration overall. In addition to that, I think it's worth mentioning that the police department and Paul Doucette took care of all of our traffic control issues. And keep in mind, this was after the police department had been told that they would have this year off, right? Because of COVID-19, there would be no battle celebration. So I'm certain some of these individuals had made their own plans for that weekend. But what did they do when the call came? They rallied around and they came out for this important event. And of course, I need to pay attention to our fire department, as always, as they have for the past 55 years. They've really played a lead role in this. Jim White, Rick Knapp, Mary Ostrander Crawford, and all of the members of the fire departments, both in town and regional and the local fire departments, just did a fantastic job, and we're deeply grateful for that. I also want to thank the speakers at the battle ceremony. And I really need to do a particular shout out to our two student speakers. That was Sophia Annisman and Chase Dobson. They really did a great job, both with the history and with their personal thoughts about the battle. I found that extremely inspiring. I have never been so proud of our local educational system and our students than when I heard those two speak at this event. Finally, I need to, of course, compliment and thank the entire Battle of Bennington 2020 Celebration Committee. There were 17 members of that group who worked very hard on this for months trying to make this happen. I'd also like to thank our financial supporters, as well as all the people that pulled off the ancillary events, whether it was the suffragette speech at the Carriage House or the historical tour by the Bennington Historical Society. Thanks to all of those people. Now, what am I thanking them for? What were we trying to do? What the heck are we doing with this Battle of Bennington in a pandemic year? We did set out some goals for ourselves. Number one, we wanted to remember those who fought in the Battle of Bennington, of course, and the essential workers who helped behind the scenes. We also wanted to honor our current day essential workers as defined by the state, honor our volunteers, acknowledge the cooperation and contributions of ordinary Vermonters, including our veterans. We also wanted to involve the people of Bennington and the surrounding towns as inclusively as possible. We wanted to affirm Bennington's position as one of the beacons of Vermont history and identity, creating favorable publicity for the town at the local and state level with outreach to our neighboring states. And finally, we tasked ourselves to create a celebration that works both live and on TV. Having a celebration during a pandemic year made that uniquely important. And I'm going to come back to that at the very end of this report. The overall consensus was that we had largely met our goals and that it had gone well. In fact, exceeded our expectations considering the constraints we were under. But don't take it from me. There was a wonderful letter in the Bennington Banner. It was written by Lene Barclay. Lene is a 96-year-old World War II veteran living at the Vermont Veterans Home. And this is what he wrote. I want to thank anyone who had anything to do with the wonderful Battle Day parade this month. We saw some of it from the lawn of the home and again in detail on television. It was a wonderful performance and well appreciated by all of us here. That's especially important because as we were designing a celebration during a pandemic year, we wanted to be inclusive and yet we wanted to keep socially distant and keep everyone safe. So having that electronic video component was absolutely essential. And we could not have done it without the support of our local cable access TV outfit, of course, Cat TV. How important was this? In addition to the testimony we just heard from Mr. Barclay about him watching it live on TV, we saw on Facebook, where it was also transmitted, as of a month ago, these numbers may have gone up, we had over 5,200 people watch that ceremony and fireworks on that Facebook page. In addition to that, of course, the thousands that were watching on Cat TV as it was happening and as it was presented over the following weeks. That was amazing. So in recognition of that, we as a committee would like to virtually present. I'm going to hold it up. I'm not sure how it's going to hold up here. I might have to turn off my background here. Oh. See there? I'm going to read it to you. It says, the 2020 Bennington Battle Day Celebration Committee hereby recognizes CAT TV for outstanding community service. In bringing the 243rd commemoration of the Battle of Bennington to our community, we will be presenting this plaque to them in person at a near date in the future. So, in addition to reporting to you and giving you these thank yous, I just wanted to give a collective thank you to the entire community of Bennington. This is unique. We are the only community in the United States of America that has been continually celebrating their battle since it happened in 1777. And for those of you from Cowpens, Virginia, I will comment that yes, you too have been celebrating yours, but that didn't happen until 1780. So sorry, we still get the kudos on that. So I wanted to again thank the select board. The last time I spoke with you, I believe, was about a week before this event happened. It's now just 7 weeks later. Sometimes it feels like an age, but I wanted to make sure that we came back to you both to profess those important thank yous to everyone who's involved in making it happen, and also to remind our community of how important this too is for all of us. And I open I have a few more minutes perhaps, and I open it to your questions or thoughts if you have.
Jonah, that's great. We're actually going to move on here, but before you go, I do want to give Sarah, I introduced this.
You were muted, Don.
I introduced this section poorly, and I wanted to just make a little space here for Sarah, who was really meant to hand this off to Sarah and allow her to introduce you. So Sarah, is there anything in particular you wanted to say as part of this item? I know you worked very hard on it, and we all were very grateful for the fact that we had a direct link to the celebration planning for you. But did you have anything prepared that you wanted to say?
No, I appreciate that. Jonah did a great job, and I appreciate the introduction that you did. I'm not a big talker. Appreciate that.
That's great. I love it, Jonah, the way you tie all these threads together for us about bringing people here and about celebrating our history. And I particularly liked it when you said that Stuart had been supporting this since 1778. You know, he is a long-serving town manager. I think that's pretty amazing that he's been supporting it since then. Good job, sir. You wear it well.
I was afraid of the town as a whole, but nicely done, Don.
Has it been that long?
All right. Any other questions from board members for this on this exceptional effort? I know a number of you were there in person. I was so sad not to be able to do it. I was in quarantine at the time, but it was a great event, right, Jeannie? Right, Jean? Who else was there? Some of you were.
Yeah, no, I think it was wonderful, and yeah, even the helicopter coming in, which was pretty exciting while it was happening. But the whole event was really wonderful. You guys did a fantastic job. I was happy to be there.
And of course, we look forward to seeing what you're cooking up for the future. So that's why we're going to keep Sarah on the job to make sure you don't the tail doesn't start to wag the dog here, Jonah.
I look forward to speaking to you in the future about that.
That's great. Thank you very much. Keep up the exciting work.
Thank you, Jonah.
Talk to you later. So, board members, I realized that I jumped right over an agenda item. I apologize. It was accidental. I probably should have asked your permission, but I literally just jumped right over it. We were before bringing in the Battle Day review, and Sarah and Jonah, we were meant to have a community policing update. So Jeannie, I'm going to make time for you to do that at this point, please.
Thank you. Oh, and it just went away. Okay, so we have three items to bring to you this evening. So first, I want to give the floor to Bruce to talk about the very productive and engaging first policy meeting last Wednesday. I had the opportunity to observe and found the policy advisory committee to be thoughtful, very respectful of different viewpoints, and incredibly well prepared. So with that, Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. On September 23rd, the Committee of 4 citizens plus 3 permanent members, plus our wonderful scribe, Michelle, and a number of the observers, including Jeannie, gathered on the third floor of the firehouse to work on 3 policies, all using all of the COVID-19 requirements of separation and masks. And by the way, one of the members was particularly wanting to note that she was appreciative of the mask requirement, that all of us wear our masks the whole time. The 3 policies were response to resistance, use of force, that's 1. Duty to intervene, and the use of conductive electric weapons. It did take all the 3 hours this time. I don't know that that will be the case later, but it certainly did this time. I think the committee did work diligently and creatively, particularly in the sections of purpose, policy, and definitions. Currently, those drafts have been reviewed by Dan Monks, who's one of the permanent members. They're currently with me for just checking, making sure that they're clear and the grammar is okay. And then I will share them back to the committee members for a brief look-see to make sure that they say what they thought they were trying to say, with the hope that they will give those their okay by the end of this week. Then we will provide them to the town for review by the chief, by the town council, and by the state's attorney's office. We hope that that will then move them. I think the easiest thing is for me to send them back to Dan or to Stu, and then you guys can distribute them. Excuse me. We hope then that the policies will be back before us sometime, maybe at an October meeting. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but a late October meeting. For an adoption at a later meeting after that. So that's the place for the public. That's the place they need to know. That's where they can have input when they come up before us. We're looking forward to the next session on October 7th at 4. Note the change of times. That's the only one that's ever going to be at 4 to 7. And we're going to be looking at the fair and impartial policing policy. All the rest of the schedule is posted on the town's website, as are many of the resources. And I will second Jeannie's comment about the community members. I was extremely pleased and challenged by their expertise and by their preparation, and it speaks well of the people of Bennington. And I went out looking for my list of the members, and for some reason my materials isn't here, and so I'm notoriously horrible with names, so I'm not going to name names, but I will name one, just because he was exceptional, and folks should know this. Dan Ferrara, who is patrolman for the Bennington Police Department. One of the real pluses of this process is that people get a chance to have a conversation with a patrol officer who is articulate, who is well-spoken, who is very knowledgeable, exceptionally prepared. The chief did, and Cam Grandy did a great job in selecting Dan. And I thank Dan for his willingness to participate in this process. It's really, really helpful. That's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Jean, do you want to talk about a new community discussion tool that we're proposing?
Sure. So, as no one probably really knows, Jeannie, Bruce, and I meet every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock on Zoom. And a couple weeks ago, we came up with this idea to try to involve more members of the community who weren't on one of the research teams, and they're not participating on one of the policy committees. They're not people that enjoy or can come to meetings. So we were feeling like there was a big segment of the community that needed an opportunity to give some feedback. So we came up with this idea. It's, really simple, but hopefully it'll get some traction. We're going to be posting boards in 5 locations, and I'll give you that list in a minute. And what it's going to involve is there's going to be, I'm going to put the, is it the mission or the vision statement? I always get them confused for the police department.
Mission.
mission. The mission statement will be there, and then there will be a prompt, a question for people to answer. And each board will be up for 2 weeks. We're going to do 3 rounds. So after those 2 weeks are over, there'll be a new question. And we'll be keeping track of the comments. We'll be removing any derogatory language or hate speech on a daily basis to make sure that that's not up for all to see. So that's the idea. We're hopefully going to kick this off this Thursday, October 1st, and have the boards posted at the 5 locations. And they are, there'll be one on the exterior of GBIX, which is on Dewey Street. St. Peter's has graciously let us use a bulletin board that they have. I guess it's on the Pleasant Street side of the sanctuary. Powers Market. Bruce, did you get confirmation for Powers?
Not yet, but it seems nearly positive. So I will confirm tomorrow. They were not able to do it today.
Okay. Just for people who are living in North Bennington or want to access that one, most likely that one's going to be inside Powers Market. There wasn't a good exterior location there. The rec center is going to have one near the main entrance on the exterior, and the town office, I'm still working with Stu on where that will be, but it will be on the exterior of the building. I think that's kind of it. There will be sticky notes there. There'll be pens. There'll be everything will be in a Ziploc bag. All the places that are in an exterior location are undercover, so hopefully they'll last through the elements. And let me just tell you to tickle your fancy that you might want to go do this. The first question was suggested by Curtis Reed, our consultant. And that is, what do you expect of a police officer? So that's the first question. And then we haven't come up with the next 2 yet. So maybe we could use some help on that. Any questions, anybody? Did I miss anything?
No, I think that was great. And we'll see. I mean, there may be something that comes up on a sticky note that gives us our next prompt. So we wanted to keep that open. Mm-hmm. All right. And then we have one more item. So, I think it's been very apparent that our partnership with Curtis Reed has been really beneficial to both the town in general and to our police department. You'll recall at the end of May, we signed a contract with the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity to provide assistance in creating a plan to implement the 25 recommendations by the IACP, or the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And to date, that means that we have, in partnership with the partnership, provided an initial meeting to gather community input on community policing, to provide ongoing guidance and expertise to both the select board work group and the police department on community policing questions and process. Curtis Reed facilitated initial training for the select board, police chief, police lieutenant, town manager, assistant manager, and the community development director. The partnership assisted in the selection, training, oversight of community researchers in developing extensive bibliographies on community policing and civilian oversight. Curtis facilitated a community meeting to develop our vision statement for the town and also a mission statement for the Bennington Police Department. And as Bruce just indicated, we've begun looking at the first 6 critical policies that were recommended for adoption by the IACP using a community advisory committee model. So after consultation with the police chief and lieutenant and also town management, the work group would like to request an additional $6,415 to continue the work with the partnership through December. This additional funding would support the Bennington Police Department and its continued work with Curtis Reed and add a full day training with the department's leadership. It also allows for a small number of hours for consultation with the select board work group. The breakdown on the $6,415 request is $5,830 would be for work with the police department, and $585 would be for continued consultation with the work group. So this would increase the cost of the contract with the partnership from $21,700 to $28,115. I would remind all of us that the Vermont Community Foundation generously contributed $22,000 to this effort. So the work group, after consultation with the police department and also with staff, would like to request an approval request your approval to increase the current contract with the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity by $6,415 to continue this highly productive work. So we would.
Hey, that's a great report. Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for that last piece. I think we were all committed to this police reform process. I think the police are really working well with it, and the community seems to be working well with it. Curtis Reed is doing a bang-up job for us. Doesn't feel like we should be bailing on this process now. So I guess I'm not sure we really need a motion on this, because we probably could just move it forward. But for the purposes of making sure that we're all on the same page, I guess I would look for a motion from somebody to extend the contract as laid out by Jeannie.
Well, Jeannie, do you want to make the motion, or should I? I think you should make the motion, and I'll second it.
Oh, okay. I would make a motion that we extend the contract with Curtis Reed to include $6,415 to continue the work with the police department and the select board.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you both. Remembering that's our net on that is still looking really good, in that we're, for a tremendous amount of work, we're still looking at something like a $6,000 price tag. So thank you to the Vermont Community Foundation for making this work so affordable for us, and thank you to the work group for not letting up, essentially. Other comments before I allow a vote on this? Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, could you tell us how many people will be involved in this training, and just a little more information on that?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the police chief would like this to be the leadership, and my understanding is that's about a third of the group, so it's 7 or 8 officers that would be involved in this training. It also the intent is to make sure that the leadership is really well versed in community policing and is able to show the kind of leadership that we all know and expect from our police department.
Other questions? If not, I guess I would ask you all to unmute yourselves, please, and we will take a vote on this motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, Jeannie, thank you very much for that report. Jean, Bruce, thank you. This is hard work, and you're carrying a lot of water on this. It's great. It's really great to have this all happening, and we're very thankful for what you're doing. Also thankful to all the community members. Just reiterating, so many people involved in this. It's really a great process. Stuart, I'm going to move on to manager's report. We're a little behind schedule here, but what have you got for us tonight?
Well, I'll pick up the pace as I can, Donald. Along the lines of the previous agenda item, I was fortunate enough to be able to join with some 24 members of our police department in a 2-day training put on by Mr. Rick Arrington. He is a presenter at some of the IACP conferences. He's got many years experience both as a police officer and as a consultant on community engaged policing. And I won't go into all the detail that I sent you, but it was enlightening for me to find out that back in the early 1800s, Sir Robert Peel developed 9 statements about what is community engaged policing. And they actually hold true today. And I think that our officers found the training really beneficial. They did receive some praise for some of the work that they have been doing in the community for quite some time, as far as engaging the community. But we used it principally as a learning tool to develop a better way, I think, of assessing neighborhood problems, not necessarily focusing so much on crimes, although they tend to be a symptom, but finding out what the problems are in a given neighborhood and finding a way to get in, delve into that neighborhood, have direct contact with the people who live there, and come to a mutually beneficial solution by engaging the neighbors in the process. I thought it was incredibly fantastic training and very worth the discounted price which Mr. Harrington provided to us. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just a reminder. On October 12th at 4 p.m., we'll have a site visit of the Furnace Brook Road landfill that the town and the Vermont Agency of Transportation have been tasked, ordered by EPA to cap. This is an old construction dump landfill that goes way back into the early days of Bennington. As far as I can tell, it was never owned or operated by the town of Bennington, but by a private consulting, private individual family. But the Furnace Brook Road right-of-way traverses the site and comes out on the upper levels of Chapel Road. Therefore, we are considered one of the potentially responsible parties. We have agreed to do the work. We are working with our engineers, MSK Engineering, and VTrans to come up with a plan that is acceptable to EPA, that hopefully is cost effective for us and for VTrans, and one that will get the job done. Dan has been the principal leader on this project, and we are moving along. It looks like we may be able to actually start some work in the spring. If the weather holds, we may even be able to do a little bit of work there in the fall, although that's speculative at best. And one of the beauties of this capping is that we will be able to use the materials that are dug out of the Chapel Road, East Road, and other locations for the PFOA projects. And that waste material will be used to cap this landfill. The principal contaminant is lead, and it's one that EPA believes can be relatively safely capped, and our role will be ultimately to give up the town highway right-of-way and help secure the access to the property in our work with VTrans. So the first step in that discontinuance process is a site visit, 4 o'clock on April 12th, and then we will meet in a public hearing at 6:15 p.m. To determine whether or not to discontinue this roadway.
Stuart, excuse me just a second. The hearing notice is not attached in our packet. Is it obvious the location that everybody should go to? I haven't been out to the site yet.
Yes, if you come out North Branch Street, you cross the Furnace Brook just beyond Morse Repair, and you take a left, depending on your location, but you would take a left and head north on Furnace Brook Road. It's well marked You get to the end of that road and it takes a right-hand turn and goes up a hill into a development that was developed by Keith Jelly some years ago. We'll meet right at the base of that hill right there, right along the Furnace Brook.
The other thing I guess I just want to put out there, gang, is that is Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly Columbus Day. I don't know how many board members you need there, Stuart. I have a work conflict, so it's going to be difficult for me to be there at 4. Are there other board members who know they can make it to this?
I can be there.
Jeannie's saying yes. Bruce is saying yes. Jean's maybe. Okay.
Yeah, the site we must hold a site visit. Doesn't mean that we have to have a quorum at the location.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry I can't be there for that. Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Please continue.
Okay. That's it. Those were the important points I wanted to make tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, PFOA and wastewater facility look like they're
PFOA is winding down. It's actually in working on the employee newsletter today. I was asking people if they remembered when PFOA was the hot topic of the community. We've been at this project as well as the village of North Bennington has for going on now 3 years. And by probably July of 2021, all of those people who were impacted will either have a new well drilled, will have a point of entry system installed and maintained, either at the expense of the state or at the expense of St. Gobain, or they will be connected to municipal public water systems, either North Bennington's or Bennington's. I think that it's, when you think back as to how complex this appeared to be, I think it's pretty amazing that we have accomplished this with as little problems as we have had.
It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable feat spanned over a tremendous area. So you and many other people deserve a lot of credit for that. As far as upcoming agendas, we've heard that a rec center update would be helpful at our next meeting. We have a standing community policing report. Stuart and Dan, what else do you have for us that people can anticipate wanting to check in on at our next select board meeting?
Well, I would suggest, Donald, that we put the recreation center update off for at least one additional meeting to give them time to react to the information that we will ask them for. I know they have started their budget process already, but it might be helpful for them to be able to talk a little bit about their anticipated financial needs as well. So if we give them just a little bit more time, I think that would be beneficial. And we'll have the display policy and the public hearing on the discontinuance. And Dan, I don't remember if you've got anything coming forward.
No, nothing that hasn't already been mentioned.
Okay. So I think it'll give us time to work on the display policy in much more detail.
Okay. Would you please send Nancy White an email and just let her know that we're putting that on?
I will let her know.
Thank you. Other agenda items from board members, necessary agenda items? No. I keep saying it, but town manager review is coming up. Jeannie and I have been brainstorming a little bit about that. It'll look a little bit like last year, but a little bit expanded. Okay, we are going into other business. There are a number of different things that I'm sure people have on their mind. It's been an awful lot happening right now. But why don't we go ahead and jump right in. Bruce, would you please start?
Sure. Just a reminder to everybody that they should, if they're in the town of Bennington and they are registered voters, they should have received or will be receiving their ballots. We've received ours just last week. So make sure that you fill those out correctly if you're going to do that. Follow the directions. And if you haven't received one, you might check to see if you're registered. And if you aren't, you might consider registering to vote. And you can do that at the town clerk's office. Just give them a call. I know Cassie's going to kill me for saying that, but they're wonderful down there, folks.
Vote,
That's
vote,
all I
vote,
got.
vote. Yeah, okay, thank you. Jean?
Yeah, I just wanted to say two things. One's a question for you, Stu. I was on Kosher Drive today and saw two people walking safely on the path, which was really wonderful to see. They were walking in the street. And Stu, is there any indication yet on people struggling to pay their property taxes because of COVID this year yet? Or is it too early to kind of get the pulse of that?
I would say that it's too early. We have heard from a number of hospitality businesses that they may have problems. And in fact, I've had conversations with, if I can remember, three different businesses. So that, I think that may be where the problem lies, because the hospitality industry has been the hardest hit, I believe, by the COVID situation. So we'll keep an eye on that. We've gone through 2 water billing cycles and have not seen a lot of problems for people at this point. But certainly taxes are a substantially higher bill to deal with.
Thanks.
Jeannie?
Well, Stu, I finally was able to get over to the Stark Street playground. And anyone that hasn't been there, it is so delightful.
Get there.
Absolutely delightful. And then, because the trail is right beside it going up to the hospital, I took the trail, and some lovely person has put a beautiful fairy house on the trail and also some inspirational rocks. So the whole thing is just as delightful as it can be. So go to Stark Street and just walk around on the playground and the trail. So thank you for suggesting it, Stu. It's lovely.
That's great. Jim?
Our credit goes to our buildings and grounds folks and to RJ, and to really bringing that to fruition. We had to make some changes.
Yeah.
But it's very nice.
It really is. They did a great job. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in case some were not aware of it, but the legislature passed our budget with no deficit and no increase in taxes for the coming year. We worked really hard on it, trying to keep taxes down, and there will be no increase in taxes to Vermonters. That's it.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Education is going to be interesting. So, let's see, Sarah.
Yes, so I just have an announcement. This is, civic organizations have been having it tough during COVID, can't really do any fundraising. This is for the Lions Club. Saturday and Sunday, they're having a Lions baked pie, baked goods, and raffle sale at the VFW on North Street. And also, let's see, I'm looking at this one. They are also having a Halloween on the Green at the old Tuttle's lot on Depot Street in Bennington. This is free family fun for the kids, October 31st, 11 to 1. Pumpkin judging, costume judging, kids games, and candy. You can bring a pumpkin and have it judged. You can either have it carved or decorated. Social distancing practice will be in effect, and masks are required. That's it from me.
That's great. Thanks. Don't want to end this meeting on a downer note, but I do want to remind people about flu shots. The hospital did a great drive-through flu vaccine thing, and it's really wonderful to have a community partner that cares so much about us. I was in the line of cars, and there were hundreds. It seemed like maybe not hundreds, but there were a lot of cars there, and they did a good job moving people through and getting a lot of vaccinations done. So it's that time of year for the regular flu vaccine, and we'll have to wait for any other vaccines. All right. Well, I am going to say I thank you very much, everybody, for being with us tonight. I would look for a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn from Sarah and seconded from Bruce. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, this meeting stands adjourned, and we will talk to you in the second Monday of October. Good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Take care.
folks.